So now that we've been through all of the components of fitness, looking at each one respectively regarding the volume intensities required in order to train that biomotor ability, of course, as a personal trainer, we have to now piece this all together as part of a training program. And one of the ways in which you can do that, and we can do this backed by science, is applying the principles of training. So we have what's known as the FIT principle and also the S.P.O.R.T principle, which we're going to go through now. So as you can see, the FIT principle is an acronym, and each letter stands for a variable that we can tweak relating to training program design. The first one, F, is known as frequency. So this is simply just referring to how many times you train, generally per week. Of course, we could do that over a month or a year, but in terms of tracking progress, it is much easier if we just go on a week-by-week basis. Intensity, we've already spoken at length about this when we've been speaking about the individual components of fitness. This is essentially how hard we train, and the easiest way to measure this from an aerobic standpoint is heart rate percentages. As we mentioned before, we work out our maximum heart rate and then the zones in which we're working, and therefore the heart rate percentages we're working at. And then if we're working with regards to resistance training, then finding out your rep max and then working in a rep max percentage can determine whether we're working certain biomotor abilities. Remember, we spoke about strength training, how that requires us to train with heavier relative intensities, higher rep max percentages, whereas if we're training strength endurance, muscular endurance, then we're training lower rep max percentages. When it comes to T, this is time or the duration, so basically how long individual sessions last. And then T is the modality of training, so what type of training is being undertaken with this particular session. So here we're talking about interval training, fartlek training, continuous training, resistance training, plyometrics. Any of those modalities we've already spoke about would make up the final T of the FIT principle. The second principle of training is referred to as the S.P.O.R.T acronym. So S standing for specificity, P for progression, O for overload, R for reversibility, and T for tedium. So if we first look at the S, which stands for specificity, this is essentially just training in a specific manner which relates to your intended goal. If we're trying to get stronger, then are we training with higher rep max percentages? If we're trying to improve our endurance, are we repeating contraction over long periods of time? If we're looking to improve our aerobic endurance, are we within a set percentage of our heart rate zones? It's just ensuring that the adaptation that you're trying to achieve is matched by the type of training that you're undertaking. When it comes to P and O, this stands for progression and overload. So combined here, we're talking about progressive overload. And this is essentially just ensuring progression with the application of our training principles. So if we look at the F.I.T.T principle, where we're looking at frequency, intensity, time, and type of training, over a periodized program of years, months, weeks, whatever it may be, what we want to be trying to do is over time increase our fitness by manipulating those FIT principles. So can we go from 2 times a week training to 4 times a week training? Can we go from a 70% rep max to a 80% rep max within a 12-week period? Can we increase the time in which we're training or the time we're spending on a particular exercise session? And can we, just to ensure that we don't get bored, can we change that type of training to increase stimulus and therefore potentially increase adaptation? Progressive overload is just ensuring that we meet that adaptation and we keep on getting fitter as our body adapts to the stimulus that we give it. Now, as you can see on the left-hand side here, we have a fantastic photo which really overviews progressive overload. If we have a bull, as you can see in the picture, and when that bull is born, we pick it up, and each day as that bull grows, of course, it gets heavier. Now, with the principle of progressive overload, what we should be able to do is indefinitely increase our strength so that we can hold on to the bull. But of course, that's not going to be the case when it becomes a fully grown bull. So progressive overload is a sound scientific principle, but it's also important to understand the shortcomings of the human body. We can't just progress our strength every single day. There are so many other variables at play, such as our sleep, stress, um, illness, anything along those lines, which may potentially intervene with continual progressive overload. Of course, we have to take that into account as a personal trainer when we're planning exercise training sessions and programs, because we have to take into account the individual stresses of your client. And of course, whilst on paper it might be important to improve on the FIT principles week on week on week, of course it's important to understand variables such as overtraining, lifestyle, nutrition. So many other factors are at play. What we're trying to achieve with progressive overload is a continual progression over a period of time. Of course, each individual's progression will be different over time, and of course, you as the personal trainer just need to ensure that you're applying those FIT principles, that they are getting stronger over a period of time, but also understanding that progressive overload doesn't take part in a linear fashion. There are bumps in the road, there are ups, there are downs, but of course, it's up to you to understand your client and to put the best plan forward. R stands for reversibility, and this is just ensuring that you don't go backwards in terms of the gains which you're making in the gym environment. So there's a few ways in which you can potentially do this, and number one is overtraining, so pushing your training so much that you actually begin to get weaker and your adaptations are reversed. Undertraining, of course, a lack of stimulus, being in the gym maybe once per week and then missing weeks, whatever it may be, of course, doesn't give the stimulus for adaptation to occur, and therefore reversibility will be present. Or indeed a lack of variety, just simply doing the same workout every single week over a number of months or even years in some cases, which of course doesn't cause any adaptation as your body is well used to the stimulus you're putting upon it. And then lastly, we have T, which stands for tedium or boredom. And this is just ensuring that your training does not get boring and that adaptation continues to occur. If we get bored of training, not only is this a mental roadblock, but also this could be a physical roadblock where the muscles are used to the stimulus you're putting on it, the weights that you're putting on it, the heart rate percentages that you're demanding from it. And if we stay in the same training zones, doing the same training routine with the same exercises, your body will also get bored and therefore adaptation will stop occurring. So again, just for the sake of enjoying your training, it's important that we vary the training methods, the modalities, not only to keep your body guessing, but also to keep your motivation in the gym environment. And lastly, just to finish off the unit, there is a section in your work booklet relating to the principles of training. So flick to the back of your booklet, complete each letter of each acronym, telling us what they mean, and then we should be well prepared to complete our Unit 4 examination in Principles of Exercise, Fitness and Health. Good luck!